I want to focus on the current strength of the ANSF, the Afghan National Security Forces, the political situation, and the few ways we have forward. The ANSF, the National Security Forces of Afghanistan, will have the pivotal and central role to play today in 2014 and beyond. But unfortunately, the size of the ANSF was not in accord with the vision of the Afghan leadership. It is in accord with the growing strength of the Taliban, and it is in accord with the growing assistance of the Pakistani government for the insurgency. I remember clearly we, the Afghans, insisting time and again that we should be allowed to have an army of nearly 100,000 men. But it was rejected on the grounds that Afghanistan is a poor country, it cannot sustain that size of a force. And the definition and the mandate of the Afghan army was defined as a force to allow the president of the country to have maneuvers, to act in the times of national calamity like floods or earthquakes, and also to be a force for helping the government resolve local disputes over pasture, water, women, whatever. It was never defined a force to protect the territorial integrity of Afghanistan or fight a proxy war. As the Pakistani assistance for Taliban continued and it grew in size, and the Taliban re-emerged as a strategic threat to the national security of Afghanistan, ANSF size was adjusted accordingly. So it's a fear-based institution, not a vision-based institution. The Afghan National Army, the key element in the National Security Forces of Afghanistan, is obviously a pride for all of the Afghans. And it is one single achievement we all can point out over the past 10 years. But I want to do a very brief macro analysis of that institution and see whether it can stand beyond 2014 with heavily subsidy and assistance from the West to keep the Taliban at bay. And I count some of the problems which hinder the capability of the Afghan National Army to be an effective fighting force. A, the army lacks securocrats. You hardly find people in the National Army who are born from the institution. You find many people who are political appointees from this faction or that faction, this individual or that individual, and they have occupied senior positions. Why? Because that is the style of President Karzai's leadership, to encourage patronage in every area. Two, massive politics of patronage and kinship, as I said, as the style of the current government of Afghanistan. The price will be paid both by Afghans and by you because you are partly financing the Afghan National Security Forces. It's a highly unsustainable force financially. As I said, the size of the force is in reaction to the strength and the growing number of the attacks by the Taliban, not based on the vision of the Afghan leadership. So in 2014, as you decrease the number of foreign troops, you have an unsustainable Afghan force, and the Taliban do not agree to negotiate, and they keep protracting the fighting. Will the strategy be to protract the size of the Afghan security forces, or just assign them to provide security for key strategic installations? Will we play according to the script of the Taliban, protract the fighting, or we confine ourselves to cities, paved roads, and government buildings, and cede territory to the insurgency? These are some of the questions I will briefly come back and answer. If the Taliban agree to negotiate, what will be the fate and future of the ANSF? Will we say then Afghanistan is a poor country, it doesn't need this size of a force, let us DDR the Afghan National Army, the Afghan police, and create civilian jobs for them? What is the vision? The Afghans have very little say in these key and strategic questions. Now, the current ANSF, the Afghan National Security Forces, in 2014 will not be able to keep the Taliban at bay and provide security for reconstruction, economic development and governance. Not necessarily because the Taliban outnumber ANSF, not that the quality of Taliban weapons is better than the ANSF, not that their logistic system is better. There are a number of facts which hinder the capability of the ANSF. Some of them I just mentioned. The other one is a force must fight for a political vision. The rear has to be very clear and clean. They have to fight for a philosophy. If that philosophy and politics is blurred and it is full of corruption and it is divided, then the utility of force decreases and it does not increase. So if we require the ANSF to be an effective fighting force and law enforcement force, then we have to cleanse Kabul, cleanse it of corruption, cleanse it of manipulation, and provide a vision and a narrative for all Afghans so they can see a brighter future. In that case, the ANSF will not fight for money only, but they will fight for something much more and bigger than financial incentive. If not, the current ANSF, with the current way of governance without reform, they will not be able to create a breakthrough, and the continuation of the current situation, a status quo, I call it muddle through. It will not bring a breakthrough in the situation. With that, I am going to the last part of my presentation. Then if the ANSF, with the massive assistance of NATO that is today, with the policy of surge escalation, are not able to create a breakthrough, the surge was not able to end the very basic and fundamental question, the assistance of Pakistan for insurgency. How can a policy of de-escalation, de-surge, decrease in attention, decrease in resources, will give us hope that in 2014 there will be a weaker Taliban, there will be a nicer Pakistan, there will be a cleaner Afghan politics? What gives us that confidence? And I am going to paint scenarios. Scenario one, what I called scenario muddle through, is status quo. We are in a stalemate today. All of us achieve tactical victories, whether it is civil society, ANSF, NATO. But can we create a breakthrough in the situation? No. Why we can't create a breakthrough in the situation? At the macro level, Pakistan is hopeful of winning strategically. They believe NATO is winning tactically. NATO is killing mid-level commanders, NATO is killing Taliban expendables, NATO is doing this thing or that thing, but NATO is unable to dry down the source of support for the Taliban, to attack the Taliban leadership, to kill the very philosophy which has brought the Taliban into existence, to decouple it with Al-Qaeda, and to have a strategy for Islamic extremism and militancy. So, if this scenario continues, what does it mean? It means Afghanistan will be a liability, not a partner. you will have to provide massive amount of subsidization and assistance to keep a system which is not able to create breakthrough and is muddling through, and you have to pay for it as civil society, for it as security forces, for its political development, but yet the size of the land controlled by the state is daily shrinking, not increasing. Scenario 2, Taliban agreed to hold talks. Let's not call that a political process. My information is, if we apply more pressure on the Taliban, if truly Pakistanis see there is no way out of this tunnel, if truly they see that, they are not seeing it today, they may agree to become militant political, similar to Lebanese Hezbollah, have a constituency, source of funding, its own army, yet enter into some type of arrangement with Kabul. If the international community ever agree to that type of arrangement, it will be fragmentation of authority in the beginning, fragmentation of the country in the second stage. Calling for the Taliban to open up an office in Turkey or in Qatar or elsewhere is the beginning of disaster. We should not weaken the very state which has been created with the blood and treasure of the West and with the blood and treasure of the Afghans. Let that state get into talks and negotiations with the Taliban. You should not internationalize the cause of a terrorist proxy group by bringing them outside their sanctuaries. Let us finish them in their sanctuaries. Now, they may at one stage come and offer and say, give us the East, give us the South, we enter into ceasefire with Kabul, but we will have a capability of delivering services, but we will not lay down our arms. That scenario is minimum what the Pakistanis want, to control their own borders with a proxy group, to evict India and diminish its access and influence in south and eastern Afghanistan, and to maintain a proxy which can be dehibernated and activated any moment Islamabad and Rawalpindi wishes to pressure Kabul. Scenario 3, what I call dream scenario, the best scenario that we need to pursue. Let us take into consideration that Pakistan will remain as deceptive as it is today. Let us think that Taliban will remain resilient as they are today. What is there that we can do to create breakthrough, reform? Let us strengthen the Afghan state. The Afghan state is judiciary, it is parliament, it is executive. Let us not be personal-centric. This name or that name. If not Karzai, who? That is a wrong question. Let us open up the space for the Afghan politics to mature and grow. Now, what do I mean exactly by reform? There will come 2014. We cannot stop the time. And when 2014 comes, instead of talking about lost opportunities with nostalgia as we do today, we should be prepared to manage the crisis then. In 2014, the Western capitals will have two types of statements ready to be issued. Statement 1, we endorsed the elections. It was fair, free, and the Afghans participated. We welcome the result. We congratulate the Afghan people. That is one scenario. You will have a partner sitting in Kabul, not a liability. The other scenario is all of the Western capitals issue a statement condemning the massive fraud and embezzlement in the elections. What do you do then? You go back to square one, square zero, and redo the election? Is there something called rewind button for time? No. So if you want to issue the first statement, let us now work hard to bring reform. It will be a shame for Afghanistan and for all of us collectively if in 2014 the Chief Justice for resolving the dispute in the Afghan elections will be again John Kerry, not the Afghan Chief Justice. not the Afghan Attorney General. So we need to bring reform in the Independent Elections Commission, in the justice sector, and we have to respect the Afghan parliament. The Afghan parliament has been bypassed, marginalized, and its prestige and standing in the Afghan society has been shattered very badly. Without these reforms, I am not saying I am against the notion suggesting that with 2014 Afghan institutions will crumble and we will sink into civil war. No. With the amount of assistance we will still get in 2014, the Afghan state will be richer than the insurgency. There will be more people willing to be with the state than with the resource-hit insurgents. But it will not create breakthrough. The other area which we badly need reform is in the area of economy, Ministry of Finance, the corruptest institution in Afghanistan. Why we are not able to tax our cities? Buildings mushrooms in Afghanistan. Ask them, have they ever paid tax? No. Yes, the Afghan revenue has increased from $500 million 10 years ago or 5 years ago to 1.5 now. For those of you who know economics, in terms of real dollars, it is the same thing. For Afghanistan to be able to sustain part of its expenses, we have to focus on the Ministry of Finance. We have to expand our tax base. We are far richer than the time of the king, but the machinery for tax collection during those days was much disciplined and better than today, despite not having the number of educated people we have today in Afghanistan. That area is neglected. Let's not be war-centric. Let's not be transition-centric. Let us use this opportunity. Unlike September to October 2001, we have 3 years, a span of 3 years in front of us to bring reform. Else, the other scenario will not be as optimistic as we all wish. Thank you.